If it...
I mean, parents would like the opportunity to shape their kids' lives. And with some parents, the goal is to get them to be an independent person and flying out on their own, because that is the hallmark of a successful parent. But with other parents, there are grievances that are so bad, and bear in mind that religious parents are people who believe that their kids who believe that non-believers are going to a place of fire and damnation and torture forever. And while it's unfortunate that they would believe that sort of thing, you should recognize that it is psychologically difficult to square that. And there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on because they don't want their kid to go to hell, right? And yet they have to believe, based on the doctrine, that the kid is not only going to this place of fire and torment forever, but they somehow deserve it. And on some level, it's admirable that somebody who has this irrational belief would want to spare their kid, and it's difficult to square that idea with the idea that their kid ought to be spared, and I mean with the idea that their kid deserves this punishment, and without this magical voodoo belief, won't get the free ticket, which they never really think about. But according to Christianity, it's the victory of mercy over justice, since justice would be going to that bad place.
Yeah. That is one reason why the sort of silent agreement that I have reached with my own parents is that religion has become this thing that we just don't really discuss. It's casually mentioned, occasionally it comes up, but my mother especially has swallowed lock, stock, and barrel the whole, I mean everything, every aspect of it, hell, heaven, and punishment, etc., etc. And it is a source of great emotional anguish to her, the thought that her little boy is going to go to hell, right? And that, in me, is just one more thing that I can check on my list of reasons to resent and hate the hell out of Christianity. Because it has introduced this unnecessary emotional anguish into her life. She is fearing and becoming distraught over something that she doesn't need to fear.
Yeah, now, never having been a Christian myself, I do not... I've never had that emotional state where I imagine somebody that I love spending an eternity in this bad place. But, I mean, using my powers of empathy, I can imagine that if I genuinely believed that my son would suffer this horrible fate, then I would be suffering from some crippling fear, because that's a horrible thing to imagine. I even, get kind of heartsick at movies where bad stuff happens to pretend kids. It makes me sad, and it makes me imagine myself in that situation, and I can't imagine what parents must be going through, dealing with that nonsense.
Yeah, because it's essentially the cruelest form of emotional blackmail you can commit against someone. Telling them, look, all your loved ones, and they're going to burn forever, and et cetera, et cetera. So I wish that there was a piece of one-size-fits-all advice that we could give to our viewers, our atheist viewers, who are young and just about to figuring out how to come out and how to deal with mom and dad and brother and sister and what have you. It's really not as simple as that. It's at the best I could say, it's a situation where you are just going to have to feel everything out, read the individual situation that you're in, read the responses that you're getting, and decide for yourself whether or not it is a subject that should even be pursued. I mean, that is also another option. Whether or not you even decide to talk about religion with your folks, if it is this thing that causes a big upset. Yeah, and it really does depend on the level of your parents' commitment to these beliefs and the age you are. Because, if
If you're out of the house and living on your own, then it's going to be unpleasant. Just ask Matt and Jeff. They're going to call you a lot. They're going to be concerned for your eternal soul. They're going to go through the same kind of arguments that that we get on this show, and not very well, because they're not practiced at it.
They're not practiced at it, and they're in this emotionally fraught state, too.
Yeah.
So.
On the other hand, if you're, say, 15, and you're in high school, they still have legal power over you, and they can, they can drag you to church, depending on
drag me to hell.
What kind of parents they are. And they can, they can do all sorts of things to make your life a living hell.
So, most of the emails that we get seem to be, the ones that ask this particular question, seem to be from, like, college kids.
Right.
For the most part. We don't hear from too many 40-year-olds.
It's in a halfway point, because I assume most of the parents are paying for their college. So there's that huge chunk of money and their life future that they could withhold from them if they chose. And then also...
well, no, I've never heard that particular concern voiced in one of these emails, but although that, I guess, would be a concern.
Right.
But,
well, I mean,
mainly,
being a disowned person, being disowned by your parents is different when you're 20 than when you're 30.
Well, sure. Yeah, but I think mainly the concern is just they're not wanting some just major family rift over this. The young atheist is wanting their parents to be simply understanding of their lack of belief and essentially realizing that, hi, it's still me here. I'm no different a person, a human being.
Except now I'm dead forever.
Except that I don't believe in God, and according to you, I'm going to go like a fire. But I'm still me. I still have the same likes. I still have the same personality. The same things still make me laugh, make me happy, make me sad.
Right.
I still like softball if I was playing softball. All of these, I'm still the same person that I was, and suddenly being godless is not going to transform me overnight into, Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs or something. So it's just going to be a situation that you'll have to feel out on your own. I mean, it's wonderful if there's just a one formula that people could deal with in terms of bringing their families on board, or at least assuaging those fears. But there's really not. Everyone's different. Everyone has their different emotional marks that they have to hit.
Yeah, of course, the answer we have when we get these emails is we never do have an answer, do we? Because, I mean, we can sit here and philosophize and tell you to see things from your parents' perspective, but, I mean, it's gonna be rough coming out to your parents at any age, and it's gonna be rougher at some ages, and I don't know, when anybody figures out what the optimal way to come out to their parents and keep things smooth and friendly is, let us know.
Yeah. Although, again, sometimes I've spoken to some folks, some friends of mine have told me that they ended up being very pleasantly surprised that a parent did not have.
Yeah, and some parents eventually become atheists. Maybe I mean, didn't Dan Barker's whole family, his brother anyway, eventually become an atheist?
Yeah, possibly. I don't know. I haven't followed his life too closely.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, I read his
Losing Faith.
Losing Faith. Yeah, and he's got a recent one, Godless, which I think has all the good bits of losing faith in faith and some new material. So,
all right,
that's a good one.
Okay, well,
if I were you, I would.
Shall we get
You're
about
sitting
that time?
in the host chair.
Yeah,
I would go straight to line 3.
You want to do that? Yes, let's do.
Yeah.
This will be Ray in Denver.
Hello, Ray.
Hello.
Hi, you're on the air. Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, no problem. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great.
Fine, thanks.
Okay. I have a question for you. What do you guys have to gain by doing this?
By doing the show?
Yeah, I mean by trying to get people to question their faith. What are you trying to prove?
Well, it's fun and interesting. It gets a lot of publicity on YouTube, and a lot of people like knowing that there's a community of folks out there who think the same way as them, since a lot of atheists tend to be kind of isolated in mostly religious communities. So, yeah, fun, community, and being a mini celebrity. That about covers it. Martin, anything else?
Mini celebrity. Well, yeah, we're here. Yeah, we're here to as an outreach to atheists, as Russell said, and because we enjoy talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
And we do live in a very religious culture, and we think that Well, perhaps our side of the argument isn't presented in the media that much, so we're here to do that.
Okay. Well, I have another question now. You're always looking for evidence. Well, there's the prophecies in the Bible. Like some of them have come true. I mean, how do you refute that?
Name one.
Yeah.
Okay, one is the creation of Israel. Did that prophecy not come true? That Israel is reborn as a nation, or did that prophecy not come true?
I mean, there are a lot of issues with different prophecies. One of them is that some of them tend to be self-fulfilling. In other words, if there are a lot of people who sincerely believe that a prophecy is true, and enough of them with enough ability to make that happen, think that will and should happen, then they can make it come true. I can't remember who says it, but if I order a steak off the menu at a restaurant and the waiter brings me a steak, was that a prophecy?
I find it fascinating that the way in which prophecies are continually brought up, and yet I look at the history of, say, Christian evangelism in the last few decades, and there have been, and still are, very, very prominent figures in Christian evangelism who have made prophecy their business. You get guys like Hal Lindsey, and then there are guys like, you could just rattle them all off. Falwell did a little bit of this, Pat Robertson, probably John Hagee in San Antonio. These guys are all about prophecy. They're all about, here's what the end times are going to reveal. The Bible is prophesying this, that, and the other thing. Hal Lindsey wrote a book in the 1970s that ended up becoming the very best-selling book of the 1970s. It was called The Late Great Planet Earth, and it discussed how in the mid-1980s, according to biblical prophecy, I think the Russians and the Chinese and a whole bunch of other countries who were countries we didn't like at the time were going to invade Israel. Like the Russians were going to come in from the north, and somebody else was going to come in from the east. And this was going to usher in Armageddon, and Revelation will be fulfilled. Jesus was going to come, etc., etc., etc. And people swallowed this all up, and he laid out all of his scripture, said this is what this prophecy means, and of course it all did not come to pass. Just didn't happen the way he said it was going to come to pass. So my problem here with prophecy, and amazingly enough, no one came out and said, hey, Hal Lindsey, you're a big fraud. We all bought your book in its millions, and none of this stuff actually happened. No, what happened was Hal Lindsey just sort of kept quiet. More years passed, and he went on to write more books, now prophesying new things.